Victor, always good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Sean.
All right. I've been looking forward to this conversation because I need your insight and your perspective and your historical analysis. I look at this election that happened, and a lot of people are telling me when you look at the demographics, young people, what their views are on socialism, on where we are in America, I worry whether or not, someone said the other day, we're not getting them back. That ship has sailed. Back when I grew up, the whole adage was, if you're not a liberal when you're young, you don't have a heart. If you're not a conservative when you're older, you don't have a brain. The folks that I'm talking to, Victor, are saying this is going to be different. These guys have been spoon-fed. They've been told that, they're going to get free stuff, that they should use their pronouns and their feelings should be paramount. Give me some context. Is this new in history, or have you seen it before?
Well, it's not that uncommon. In 1936, the Oxford Union voted that overwhelmingly, this was during the rise of Hitler, during the Saarland and everything, where Hitler was starting to be very provocative. They said under no circumstances would anybody vote, under no circumstances would anybody serve in the British Army to oppose anybody. Under king and country, they said there's not going to, and then yet in 1939 they had overwhelming enlistment. So it's a product of those half of the people who go to college have been brainwashed, so to speak, for the most part, and they're angry because they feel they have letters after their name now, they have titles, and they're in finance, law, teaching, government, and they can't afford a house, or they cannot afford the type of lifestyle their parents had of the upper middle class. And then the other half who did not go to school feel that they're not the subsidized poor, and they're not the upper middle class. They're the working classes, and they're being forgotten. And these are the people that Donald Trump reached out to and championed. But the problem that all of these candidates had on the Republican side, I never heard them talking about jobs, houses. I never heard anybody even trying to make a complex argument, not that complex, saying when Donald Trump came in, the average inflation rate over 4 years was 5.2. He got it down the first year to 3, and it's going down. Joe Biden drained 200 million barrels out of the strategic petroleum reserve. Now gas is 30 cents a gallon cheaper than on the average, and we're pumping 1 million barrels more. They said the stock market would crash. It did not. GDP had one of the most robust growth rates at 3.4 in the second quarter. I didn't hear any of that. And I didn't hear any, listen, everybody, we've deregulated the economy. We've cut some spending. We've got about $10 trillion in foreign investment at least coming in. That's going to take a while, but this economy is going to really do well, and it's on that trajectory. All we have to work on are interest rates. And so instead, Winston Sears, whom I like and admire, he just talked about transgenderism the whole time. And Chiarelli talked, he was good, but he talked just about lowering taxes, but not about affordability or inflation or gas or food prices, all of which Biden is mostly culpable for. So they didn't get that message out. And the other thing is, very quickly, they have kind of a chaos, the left theory. Get in the street, scream and yell at ICE, get violent, have people like Nancy Pelosi or Hakeem Jeffrey call Trump a vile creature or a Hitler, let off some F-bombs, do smutty videos, firebomb Teslas, and shut down the government. And it's kind of just the bedlam, and everybody, they think that, and I think they might be correct, that the average voter just gets in his fetal position and says, I can't take it anymore. Who's responsible for this? And they say, well, the people who are running the government. We don't run the government. The House, the Senate, Supreme Court, Trump. And so they've got a year, but I'm not one of these people who says, well, they were just in blue states, because they won, in the case in Virginia, much more with a much wider margin in New Jersey and in Virginia than they should have. And the candidates were not sharp I thought they were not as sharp as they could be. So they've got a year to recalibrate before the midterms. The only thing I'm worried about is this midterm is not going to be a normal midterm next year. This is a midterm that if the Democrats win, they're going to impeach Donald Trump within 2 weeks. They won't. I don't think they'll get enough Senate seats to convict him, but that House January 6th committee is a model of what they're going to do. They're going to start they'll slow down the government, and it'll be lawfare, lawfare, lawfare. So we've got about a year if Donald Trump is going to get his agenda through. They've got to really push that, and then they've got to recalibrate and remessage.
All right, guys, if you need a great night's sleep, do what I do every single night. Use Beam's Dream Powder. Right now, the ultimate cyber discount is available to my listeners, only 50% off, the best deal going that you are going to thank me for, because you're going to sleep better. You're going to stay asleep, wake up feeling refreshed. Go to shopbeam.com/Spicer. Use code Spicer for 50% off for a very, very limited time during their cyber sale. Shopbeam.com/Spicer, code word Spicer, 50% off. Yeah, I actually want to break down a couple of those things. But you know what's interesting? You touch on the issue of affordability. I have a theory I want to run by you.
Yeah.
So let's keep this easy. Let's just say that 8 years ago, gas was bread was $3. Under Biden, it went to $5. Okay. And I just for everyone listening, I'm making this up, but this is why I'm going to keep it simple. So it was $3. It goes to $5 under Biden. And the problem with the Biden administration is they said, don't believe your lying eyes. It's transitory. This is no big deal. We all knew that was a lie. Okay. And it was not true. What happens, in my view, is that when Trump came in, he took that 5 and brought it to 4. Okay. And what the normal person says, oh, it's still $1 higher than when it was the first time you're here. And I think in the Trump mind, it's, I got you down to 4. And where I think there's a disconnect, and I just want your theory on this, is that because I talk to people all the time, they go, this is the same problem that Biden had. I go, no. It's different. Biden said 3 to 5, there's no difference. Trump is saying, hey, I got this under control from 5 back down to 4, but it's not 3 again. I know this sounds weird, but I just am like, the problem is I think people want it back to 3, and Trump's trying to tell them, hey, I got it from 5 to 4. That's pretty good, right?
Yeah, it is. There's another argument that Trump needs to make. It's a little bit more complex in a campaign soundbite, and that is, I took it from 5 to 4, and I'm working on it getting to 3.
That's the piece that's missing. That's the piece. I'm working more.
But he's got to say, the reason I haven't got to 3 right immediately, because there were long-term trims that were not sustainable. If you bring in 30 million over 20 years and 12 million illegally and cheap labor, you can lower the cost of products, but it's not sustainable because the social welfare, the crime, the dislocation is higher than what we save. And then by the same token, did you really want us to have a nation of imported Chinese cheap stuff at Target and Walmart? So I had to do tariffs. So these were correctives. I still got it down, but once we readjust and we get back to domestic manufacturing that was destroyed by cheap imports, and once we close the border and Americans get higher paying wages, I will get it down to 2. And that's the argument. It's a little bit more complex to make, but it's an argument that was not attempted.
So you just put your finger on exactly what I think is missing from the, with all due respect, the Republican sentence, which is it's 5 to 4, and we're trying to they keep missing and we're going to keep fighting to get it to 3, right? That's what the American people want. Like, maybe it's not even real, but people are like, it's still $1 more than it was a year ago. I get you're doing your job, but that's where I think they're missing. And I think that they're not ending the sentence correctly. And this is true. I think the president made another one of these drug announcements, right? One of the big costs for a lot of families is the cost of prescription drugs. And I think they're missing the disconnect between, yes, I'm getting these drugs cheaper, but like, people need to make almost like, to your point, they're not connecting the dots and saying, I got all these things that you guys take, and now life will be more affordable.
Yeah, there's one other element that you know better than I do. You've been in government. But in 91, George H.W. Bush had fantastic reviews, even after the denouement, a little bit troublesome, but of the 91 Gulf War. And the heroes were Dick Cheney, Secretary of Defense, and Colin Powell, and 4-Day War. And he was polling 90%. And there were no Democrats that wanted to run against him a year later. And Bill Clinton, nobody really knew who he was. He was the one that stepped up. And they had a mild recession. But, James Carville, it's economy stupid. They turned that mild recession into the Great Depression. And every time a guy came into the war room they said, shut up, it's the economy. And everybody thought that was silly. How could they vote against George W. Bush, who's New World Order and post-Cold War? And my point of all this is Donald Trump has been miraculous overseas. He destroyed the Iranian nuclear installations for 5 or 6 years at least. He's re-energized NATO. He's got a new Asian alliance. He's 7 or 8 ceasefires. But when you talk about all that, and that's what the Republicans do, a lot what the Democrats do and what the public is susceptible to is, well, why is Trump over in Japan now cutting a deal with a bunch of wealthy people for foreign investment when he should be here at the shutdown? In other words, they're doing the same thing they did in 92, that election. They said it's the economy, stupid. So I think Republicans think, how could they vote against us? We've had this spectacular, we stopped DEI, we stopped illegal immigration, we have this, and that's true, but all they're going to talk about is the economy. And even though Biden is culpable, but until the Republicans get not only the right message and answer to those questions of affordability, but they drill it into people nonstop, ad nauseum, and let the other stuff speak for itself, because they're not talking about the economy in these recent New Jersey and Virginia campaigns. I mean, I didn't hear a lot about it. I heard a lot about tax cuts. I heard a lot about transgenderism. I heard DI, but not the economy.
No, I'm actually making a note, as you said, because I think you're absolutely right. I think that what is funny about the overseas thing, because a couple Democrats made, when the president was traveling overseas, oh, the president's overseas while the government shut down. And this goes back to my comment about drug prices, where I think the president, respectfully, I would say, add something, put a comma into your thing. He's getting this foreign direct investment. I'm getting them to invest in these Toyota plants, for example, he said in Japan, right? And so then it becomes, and where the comma needs to come in, and therefore this is going to create good paying jobs in America. This is going to bring costs down for America. They're missing the comma. They're missing and here's why it matters to you, right? And that's what I think, part of the Jack Chitterelli point to your statement. Yeah, he's talking about taxes. But taxes for the sake of cutting taxes sounds great. He needs to say, and this will be the impact it'll have on your life. You will have more money to take care of your kids. They're missing the comma.
They are. They need to have a two-pronged approach. They said not only are lower taxes going to help you, but we're going to give incentives for high-income developers and green fast streaming zoning and giving incentives to build houses and apartments and to price them affordable. Anybody that does that is going to get tax breaks, not more government and more obstruction, but we're going to try to get as many new housing units and get competition in housing to lower the price. But nobody made that argument. And so they've got a year to recalibrate. The other thing very quickly is they should know better than anybody that there's a limit to negative advertising. The left in 24 thought we're going to use the word felon. Donald Trump, felon, 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 felon. 91 indictments. But he was bulletproof on that after a while. It didn't matter. Forget about the merits. They were all lawfare bogus, but the people didn't care anymore about it. And they're dealing with a radical Jacobin party. It's not the Democratic Party. So when they think they found the magic bullet with Jay Jones because he said these horrific things, and they thought that people the exit poll said 10% of people worried about that voted for him. That didn't. If anything should have stuck, that should have. But what I'm getting is when you're dealing with a Jacobin revolutionary socialist, and you say, "Wow, Mondami is on record saying that he's going to seize the means of production, that he's going to tax white," they're going to say, "Yeah, that's what so what? He's on our team, and we're going to," and that's the way that the left-wing mind thinks. So there was no, in New Jersey, well, Sherelle didn't walk with her class at graduation. Well, yeah, or she made $7 million, but the left doesn't care about that.
That's right.
You can't hurt the left. I mean, you can use it, and it's good to use it one or two times, but if that's all you have, and that's pretty much, if you were to sum up Winsome Sears' campaign, it was all I heard were two things: that Spamberger was for transgendered, women, men in women sports and locker rooms, and that she would not disown Jay Jones is horrific. That's it. I didn't hear any new plan. I didn't hear about housing. I didn't hear about affordability, gas, anything. And I'm not trying to pick on her, but this has been very fortunate. The Republicans were given a gift of this off year election because it wasn't the midterms, which is off year. This was an off year in blue places. And all they were looking at the margin. I think it would have been very hard to win these races, especially here in California with Prop 50. But the margin by which they lost, and even Mondami didn't win as much as he should have, will, I think, wake them up and make them reboot. And Trump is already talking today about, affordability. And so they've got to get that out, and they've got to get plans. And then I think the long term is there will be higher wages the more people who are deported. And I can tell you here in California, there's already people are already looking for more people, U.S. citizens. And then I think the sheer mass of Joe Biden in 4 years got $200 billion of foreign investment. You talk to economists, they say, for every $1 billion, you can get as many as 5,000 jobs. But we've never been at this level. When Trump says there's $15 trillion in foreign investment, let's just cut it in half and say that's rhetoric. $7 trillion. We've never had that much. And there will be positive ramifications of that. But that's going to take a year or two.
Yes.
And they've got to prep the people and say, we're doing things in the process that are going to make this country as wealthy as you can ever imagine it. But for right now, we're also going to do this. Prep our way.
I totally agree with this because you got to put it into the pipeline and it's going to take a while to work its way through. So you got to prep people and say, hey, that foreign direct investment, he jokes about Mr. Toyota investing in plants here in the United States. It's not going to happen overnight. They're going to plan, they're going to build, they're going to create jobs, and then it'll come out the end of the pipeline in 12 months. But he's got to start explaining to people this investment that I'm getting when I go around the world, frankly, the Chinese buying soybeans, the Japanese investing in Toyota plants. It's, the Taiwanese building a chip plant in Arizona. This isn't going to happen overnight. They're not going to show up one day and pop up like it's a holiday pop-up store. It's going to take a little while to build the infrastructure, to get the pipeline moving, to hire the workers. But trust me, in 12 to 14 months, it's going to come out the other side. You said something a second ago, and I want to drill down because I think it's critical. We have a Republican House and a Republican Senate and a Republican president, at least till next midterm. And you said something about the Trump agenda and policies. If the president called you today and said, Victor, I've got a guaranteed 12 months left of a Republican House and a Republican Senate, what are the three things that I should definitely get done? What would those be?
Well, I would say the first is communication, obviously, but I'd also say you've got all this foreign investment. I would lock it down, and then I'd get a bunch of economists to come into the White House and say, look, you guys, I want you to give me a pretty good answer for each $1 trillion. I want to know how many jobs. I know they're going to be different types of areas. So I want to go out, and every time I go overseas, I'm not going to talk about $1 trillion. I'm going to say I'm in Japan right now, and they're going to invest, and that is going to create 4,700 jobs in Arizona. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to talk about foreign investment, not about billionaires or $1 trillion, but how it equates to how many I'm going to be the jobs president. I'm going to make so many more jobs you're not going to believe. You're going to get tired of winning. And then when I put that together with closing that border, it's going to be a 1-2 punch. Americans only, and no more foreign people competing to drive down wages, and millions of jobs coming over. That would be a very good thing that I think he could say. And then the other thing is, I've got the best energy secretary and secretary of the interior I've ever had, and nobody's had them better. And they were working hand in glove. They're having so many leases. We have pumping this amount of natural gas. We're glowing. We're lowered at already 30 to 40 cents, and we're going to go down, and we're going to get that electricity price down and energy. And then he's got to talk about homes, and he's going to say, we're going to get housing. It's going to be better than the post-war era when we had 12 million people came back and they couldn't get a house. In 5 years, they could. How did they do it? We gave so many incentives to build house. We got those interest rates. I'm going to go tell the insurance. I'm going to do something about home insurance, fire insurance. And half you people can't afford to pay your property taxes, your home insurance, and buy a house. I'm going to work on all of that, get that interest rate. Just talk about that like that. And have a team with, I would get a bunch of people and say, you're going to give me policies to help the insurance. I don't know whether it's deregulating or what, but get the insurance costs down. I want you to get the governors, how we get property taxes down like DeSantis is trying to do. And then I want more houses built. And then we're going to hammer the interest rates like we've never done. If you get lower interest, lower insurance, lower property taxes, lower houses, you'll have a boom. And he needs to articulate that. And he's better at it than anybody. That's why I don't understand. I understand his energy, but all they're talking about right now is Nobel Prize, all of this stuff. And what it's doing is, it's kind of in a very ironic way, it's allowing the Democrats to talk like MAGA people. And the Democrats are now emulating MAGA and saying, well, Donald Trump is over there with Iran, and he's in the Middle East, and now he's going to fly into Ukraine, and we're going to give tomahawks, and he's in Japan, he's cutting all these deals and everything. Why isn't he here home working on this? Well, that's kind of a demagogic thing to say because it's all connected, but it worked, is what I'm not trying to say what the Democrats are doing are valid. It's demagoguery, but you've got to fight that and fight it tooth and nail.
You mentioned the interest rate, and I think that's exactly right. For so many people, owning a home is the achievement of the American dream. That piece of I own a home. You build equity. That's how you can transfer wealth. And high interest rates are inhibiting people from getting that. And so to your point, it's not that when he's talking about hammering interest rates, which you're absolutely right on, it's not hammering them for the sake of hammering them, right? It's, I want to put home ownership in your sights. And the way to do that is lower interest rates. That's why I care about that's where I think he needs to make that one more connection. He's not doing it for the sake of doing it. He's doing it because it's going to make your credit card bills cheaper, your car payments cheaper, and the affordability of a home, the American dream, within your sights again.
I have 2 children that are adults in their 40s, and I help them with a down payment. But when I talk to them about their budgets, it's oh man, we've got to be very careful. They both live in California. We've got this high assessments. We got our property tax. This is $1,000 a month. We've got insurance that's gone from $400 to $900 a month. The interest rate on the loan, I can't get refinanced. It's not that good. And then the house itself was the payment. So what he needs to do is talk about the average person's monthly payment. What gets you in a house? And it's not just the house, it's the interest payment, it's the insurance, and it's the property tax. And talk about just the package. I'm going to address all of that and get you into a house. And that's what he needs.
I want to go back to the election for a second, because you alluded to Jay Jones in Virginia and Winsome talking about this. I can't believe where we are in this country for 2 reasons. One, the idea that Mondami won New York, not because of his policies, put those aside for a second. Okay. And just the idea that a guy who palled around with unindicted co-conspirators from 9/11, who's getting photographed willingly and openly. He's not denying these communist people. He's literally, hey, here's a selfie with me and this guy. Do you want another one? Right. And then two, in Jay Jones, 51% of Virginians, 51% voted for a guy who put in a text. Again, you should almost be disqualified for being that stupid. The idea that you put in a text, I want to kill my opponent and then watch his child die in the mother's arms. There's a level of just forget what he said. You're that dumb that you put it in writing, you moron. But what does it say about the Democratic Party? That what used to be taboo, if you had told me, Victor, 10 years ago, there's going to be a guy running and he's going to be palling around with people who are unindicted co-conspirators, I'd be like, that's nuts. If you told me that there's a candidate running for any office, never mind attorney general, there's going to be a text that says he wants to kill his political opponent, I'd say you're nuts. I've been doing this 30 years, Victor, never going to happen. And yet both things happen. What does that say about where we are as a society and the Democratic Party?
Well, there's two things going on, and we got to add to your point, which was excellent, is that those texts were not just, I want to kill them. The respondent said, you don't really mean that, do you? And he doubled down on it. And then more importantly, I thought Winsome Sears said, you know, how many people out there have gotten a ticket for 85 miles an hour? I never have. He didn't get one for 85. He didn't get one for 90. He didn't get one for 95. He didn't get one for 100. He didn't get one for 105. He didn't get one for 110. He didn't get one for 115. He's the attorney general, the top highway patrolman of the whole state. He drove 116 miles an hour and threatened everybody on the roads live. And I never heard that. But why does that not matter? There's two things that were going on. One is the DEI. They have been so indoctrinated, race, white, non-white, victim, oppressor, victimized, victimizer, oppressed, oppressor. And it has it doesn't help the Republicans, because every time you see, you have to have a good candidate. And the fact that Winsome Sears, I didn't think was a dynamic candidate. Everybody thought, well, she's black, that will help. No. If you're a black conservative, you have another barrier, because the left is actually racist, and they look at you and say, you're sold out. And even white liberals think that. So there's no advantage one way or the other on race, but that's not true of the left. So if Jay Jones had been a middle class, white guy about 60, that would have really stung, especially the speeding ticket. But the idea was, he kept saying, my father and grandfather were pioneer black, and and then Mondami kept talking about race, and people said, you know what? I thought the most damning thing is they had a cut when he was in Uganda, and he talked like he was in India. He had an Indian accent, and he was faking it to all these Ugandans. But the point I'm making is, we're a city of immigrants. Well, 60% of New York are not immigrants. But he kept saying, you know, that was a code. We're going to go after whiter neighborhoods. Well, the most affluent ethnic group in the United States are immigrants from India, Indian American. Are you going to go after them? I thought Cuomo was going to say something, but the DEI really helped hurt them. And then the other thing is, you and I, from a different generation, but we knew that if you went 116 miles an hour, you threatened to kill somebody. That was pretty bad. But these guys are from defund the police, $950 of theft isn't a crime, break windows, hit an ICE officer, it's no big felony to attack. They've grown up with the idea of social justice, critical race theory, critical legal theory. The only reason it's against the law to steal sneakers is because wealthy white Christian males don't need to steal sneakers. So they made these artificial constructs called "don't steal sneakers." But that doesn't apply to us, because this is a matter of social justice, not law. And that's how they think. And so in their way of thinking, they bulletproof themselves. You can say almost anything, except if Jay Jones had have said, and they dug up something in his past, and they found an old interview where he said, you know, I think the rhetoric has been so acerbic, and I think, you know, I look at Trump, there's a lot of stuff he did that was good. He would have been outdone. through. Zero. And that's how they think. As long as you stay with a party line and you're vehement and you're fiery like AOC or Jasmine. Jasmine Crockett hasn't had an idea in her entire life, but she's now a marquee figure because she's just foul-mouthed. We're going to win. Donald Trump is an ogre. That's all they care about. And it makes it very hard. It's, that's how socialism works. You're either on the team or you're not. And that's why they hate Fetterman so much. Yeah. Because they think, you know what? He's not a committed leftist. He's too weak. He's not all the way. I mean, the Republicans do that, but to some extent, but they have a lot more latitude. Nobody goes after Rand Paul and says, you're hurting Trump when this, or, what's this about stopping killing drug dealers on the high seas? They say instead, you know what, that's Rand, and 95% of the time he's on the same team. So just let him have his way. That's not how the left thinks.
That's right. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.